Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and I'm here today to make another double-stranded blank out of Stroll fingering weight yarn. The one difference from last time, well there's two differences from what I did last time. One, I am using a medium gray called Ash, and the second thing is that I am starting with two 50-gram balls of yarn instead of using a one center pull ball and using the two ends. If you watched my last live stream where I unraveled a homemade blank, you saw that there were a lot of problems with the yarns twisting around each other. So hopefully starting from two 50-gram balls of yarn will help. Now, I thought that when I was going to start this tutorial that I would try doing a flat blank, but I found that trying to knit the flat blank was a little intolerable because my gears on my knitting machine stick in the back and forth, and so I decided it wasn't worth it. I'm going to make another blank in the round on this machine, holding two strands of yarn together at a time. So I'm going to set this up just like before. I'm skipping every other hook. It's just the main difference is that I'm not dealing with a center pull ball. All right, now we're back at the beginning. The yarn into the thread inlet and start cranking. Now I've found that with this machine I need to keep my tension really, really loose. And yeah, she's still sticking a little bit. There we go. Now she's happier. There's a lot of static today. So, you know, and it's still possible that we'll have some trouble when we try untwisting these yarns. But overall, I think that this will be a little easier than last time because I'm not sure if you can see, but the two strands coming in are coming from different directions versus the outside of the center pull bowl winding around the inside as we create the blank. The other reason why I am filming another video is to show that when you're making a pre-knit blank, my legs were in the way. When you're making a pre-knit blank, you do not have to stick to a beige undyed color. You can choose to start with a gray or with a pink or whatever color you think that you might want to over dye. The pluses of making your own blanks aren't just that you can use whatever fiber content you want, but you can start with whatever color you want too. So just like last time, I am making my best attempt to have the two strands of yarn feed into the machine at the same rate. So that way I can get as even a blank as possible. Eek. There we go. So for a while these are commercially wound balls and not homemade center pull balls, I am still pulling from the center of them. So it's a little tight right here at the beginning, so I am pulling, you know, a couple yards out at a time as I am doing this. Yeah, because if the tension gets too tight, which it's funny that even just from like a fairly loose center ball it can, then the machine starts to struggle a bit. It really, really likes you to have a nice loose tension. And as long as your tension is loose, then you can crank away pretty easily. With the ChemKnits Dye Along and the Sock Blank Special 2 coming up, I thought it was worth demonstrating another way that you could create your own blanks in addition to purchasing commercial blanks. But making your own blanks like this gives you a little more freedom versus what is available commercially. So there's also no reason why you couldn't dye your own yarn, turn it into a blank and then over dye it using one of these techniques that we've shown you. Then when we unravel it, we can see, do we prefer having 2 balls of yarn when it comes to the ease of unraveling our homemade blank, or does it really not make too much of a difference at all? Now that we've got past the very center of the center pull on our balls, the tension going in is a lot less, so I'm not needing to pull out yarn from the balls. And you can see that I'm having a lot easier time winding this blank. And it is getting longer and longer and is quite pretty. And if you find your gears starting to catch, I find it helpful to just pull some of the yarn out a little bit. It helps relieve some of the tension, and that can help. But keep an eye still on the yarns going in to try to make sure that they are going into your machine and onto the stitches at a similar rate. At first, I thought I wouldn't bother showing how I finish off the blank in this video. However, it's against my nature not to film it, so even if this causes editing strangeness, I'm gonna go for it. So of our 2 balls of yarn, we have a couple feet left of one, and then the other is just about done. So I am going to let the very end of the one catch, and then sort of put the rest of the yarn of the other into the center. I'm still having major static issues with this, goodness. I'm going to put the other strand into the center, just because I don't want to make any stitches from it. And I'm going to wind around, and you see that it just slips off really, really nicely. This one, since I have a loose strand, I'm going to just wind one strand through the live stitches to keep them from unraveling. You could do a proper bind off, but I don't really bother. I don't find it to be super necessary, and this will be just as easy to unravel in the end. So I'm really just slipping the needle through all of these stitches. I forget how many there are. I'm using the yarn needle that came with the knitting machine, but you could use a crochet hook or basically anything you wanted. And if I accidentally drop a stitch, I just go through the one below it, because again, we're planning to unravel this anyway. This blank right here is not as perfect as the one that I wound in the last video. There are some dropped stitches that came up during its construction. I'll show you some of those in a minute. Once I finish picking up these stitches. Okay. And sometimes I like to leave a big loop so that way I can easily pull it apart, but we now have the stitches just secured with sort of a safety line so it does not unravel. Our gray double-stranded sock blank that we created using Knit Picks Stroll Ash is complete, and there are some errors. You can see here that these stitches aren't even. It looks like maybe we dropped some and picked some up. But ultimately, once we dye this, we should end up with 2 either identical or extremely close to identical 50-gram balls of yarn. And so this is great if we want to make something that's symmetrical, or maybe 2 socks or mittens that are identical. So why bother making your own blank? If you have some kind of knitting machine, you can create a blank with any fiber type you really want. You're not limited to the few options that are commercially available. Most of the sock blanks you can purchase use some kind of superwash wool nylon blend. And the stroll yarn that is the base of this blank we made today is identical to the base that you can buy from Knit Picks in their sock blank. However, our sock blank is gray. You could pick any color you wanted to add something asymmetrical or special to it. There's no reason why you need to start with official bare yarn when you're creating your own sock blanks. Hopefully, using 2 balls of yarn in the creation of this blank will make it easier to unravel, because unlike using both ends of the center pull ball, which I showed in my last tutorial, the yarns in this case were not wrapping around one another when they were entering the machine. So I think that this should be easier to unravel. Either way, even if the yarns are twisted around each other, it only took me about twice as long to unravel the blank as it did to unravel a commercial blank. So it was more difficult, but not significantly more difficult to do it. Ultimately, the decision to knit your own blank comes down to 3 factors. Time, do you want to bother making your own blanks? Money, is it more cost effective to make your own blank? And finally, fiber content. If you can buy a blank in a yarn that you love and that you love to dye, then it doesn't really matter. I will admit, I just placed an order for 20 pack of Knit Picks Stroll sock blanks because I really enjoy dyeing them. But I know that especially with the sock blank special coming up, a lot of you are interested in obtaining your own sock blanks. So I want to feature more of a range of blanks that have either been knit or crocheted that you can dye yourself to show that these techniques that I'm showing aren't limited to commercially knit blanks. We have a dye along coming up, the Sock Blank Special 2, which will start on the week of February 26th. And my goal in showing some of these sock blank knitting videos is that you are not limited to what is commercially available. And you are also not limited to bare yarn or even sock yarn when it comes to blanks. So hopefully this might inspire you to also think outside the box a little bit as we get really excited to dye some sock blanks. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you for watching this video.